Okay, folks, welcome back to another episode of Microsoft 7687 Preparatory Exam Course covering Windows 8.1. My name is Scott Neal, and today we are covering the last chapter of the Microsoft 7687 exam book, which deals with restoring files and folders. And we're going to be covering exam objective 7.2 today. We're going to start off the discussion by explaining what happened to backup and restore and system image backups. If you were trying to set up your backup and restore or do a system image backup and you just migrated to Windows 8.1, you are probably in for a nasty surprise. We'll talk about, well, what to do. And then we'll also lead into a discussion about file history, using file history to basically restore files and folders on the system. Before we finish and go to the demo, we'll talk about restoring OneDrive files as well. So let's go ahead and get started. So, what did happen to the backup and restore? Well, as you recall, previous versions of Windows would allow you to use what we call the backup and restore utility from the control panel to back up all the files and folders on our system. And through the backup and restore panel, we could go in and we could pick and choose which files, which folders, what days of the week, when we wanted these to be backed up and run. So what happened? Well, Windows 8 actually should have been a clue as to what was going to happen, because Windows 8 included both the file history utility and the old backup and restore utility. But even back when Windows 8 first came out, Windows did announce that they consider those utilities deprecated and no longer functional for the future versions of Windows. So, why did they do this? Well, we could speculate that they really wanted us to rely or start using file history, which arguably by some could be considered a much better utility for allowing us to restore from previous versions of files and folders. And we'll talk more about that momentarily. So, what is file history? Well, Windows has used something called volume shadow copy for a long time. If you have ever worked in a server environment, you may recall all the way back to Windows 2003 when we first introduced volume shadow copy as a means of restoring previous versions of files and folders in our Windows Server environment. Well, actually we could do that in our client environments as well. If you had a copy of Windows XP or even Windows 7 and you discovered something called previous versions, well, previous versions is really a fancy word for volume shadow copy, which would allow us to recover and restore data. They have just basically simplified this. They've renamed it file history. They've done away with everything so that you are kind of pushed into using file history as a primary means of backing up and restoring your data. So before we get into the file history, I do want to talk about the system image backups. Likewise, system image backups, at least on the surface, appear to be missing through the GUI interface. But I do want to let you in a little secret, and that is you can still achieve a system image backup using the Windows utilities through the commandlets in the PowerShell. So before I show you how to do that, I do want to clarify something right off the bat, and that is system images are different from recovery images. We talked about recovery images, creating those with the record image in the last lesson, but a system image really contains a complete full snapshot of the system's hard drive, including the user's files and settings. So big difference between the record image and a system image. I can even take that a step further, and we could talk about system images in regards to whether it's sector-based or a file-based image. Microsoft WIM images are file-based, whereas images generated from, say Clonezilla or Ghost, these are sector-by-sector images, and they are less flexible than the WIM images. But I begin to digress and talk about something that really probably I should cover in another episode when we talk about things like Windows deployment services. Alright, so let's move on. So how do you do a system image backup then? Well, first and foremost you need to attach an external drive. And we're going to assign that drive a drive letter. In this case, for our example, we're going to assign it drive letter E. I'm going to press the Windows key and X and go into the Windows PowerShell with the administrative mode, and I will then where C is going to be my system disk, I'm going to type the command that you see here on the screen. The wbadmin start backup. I'm going to use the backup target as E drive, and I'm going to include the C drive. I'm going to also specify that it's going to be all critical and quiet. That quiet command really spares you all the prompts. It really does the whole backup process seamlessly when you do it that way. Doesn't matter which order you put the all critical or the quiet either. So this is, if you're still wanting to do a system image backup, you don't want to invest in a third-party utility, or you definitely want the advantage of a WIM image, system image backup's the way to go. Alright, so this is what you'll end up with. You'll be looking at the Windows PowerShell. The command has been evoked on the PowerShell, and we're beginning to retrieve the volume information prior to the actual image backup process. Now, we'll also point out that you can use the Start Backup utility to back up multiple drives at once. I would do something like include C:, D:, E:, whatever. All right, now, also, I can use the same utility to back up network shares in the same manner. The only thing I need is a network share path, with the server and the file path, and it will actually back those up to the specified location as well. System images, not dead, just well hidden in 8.1. Alright, so let's go back to using file history. As I said earlier, Windows is really pushing file history as the primary method of restoring files and folders on our system. It is available in all versions of 8.1. It can be found under the control panel under System and Security. The whole point of file history, of course, is to protect the selected files and folders that you're backing up from accidental deletion or corruption by saving really multiple versions in which I can then later retrieve and restore on command. And the nice thing about file history is I'm not obligated to restore those to their original location. No, I can actually restore them to a location of my choosing, thereby keeping the corrupted copy as a safety measure until I am sure that that copy I've restored will work for me. It does require administrative access to configure, and I will also point out that file history is not enabled by default. You're going to have to go in and configure it. Another shining example of a recovery tool that does require a little user forethought prior to actually needing it. Okay, so last thing I want to talk about before we move into the demo is restoring OneDrive files. Now, everybody with a Microsoft account these days does have a OneDrive availability. They do have to, of course, be logged into the system using their OneDrive credentials, or if they don't want to do that, they can log directly into the website. It really doesn't matter. The deleted files are going to be stored on the OneDrive's web-based recycle bin. They're not stored locally on the machine, regardless of how you log into the system. By default, OneDrive will store these deleted files in the recycle bin for 30 days. Or if 10% or less of the storage space remains in the OneDrive, either one of these will begin to invoke the permanent deletion process of those files in the storage bin. If I delete something and I want to undelete it, I have two ways that I can do that. First of all, if I right-click on a file or folder and choose to delete it, while that deletion process is proceeding, I can simply undelete it by pushing the undo button. An undo button is going to show up. If I click on it, it will cancel that process and restore the file. If I've allowed that deletion process to proceed and it completes, those files and folders will be tucked away safe and sound in the OneDrive recycle bin for 30 days. Anytime prior to the 30-day period, and provided I have enough space on my drive that I'm not invoking the instant delete cycle on that recycle bin, I can go back and restore them simply by going in, checking the appropriate checkboxes for the files and folders I want to restore, and selecting restore. It's really that simple. Okay, so this is arguably the quickest lecture in the lecture series dealing with Windows 8.1. And it's typical for Microsoft to have their last chapter be one of the small chapters. Either way, I am going to do a quick lesson summary. Windows 8.1 now uses file history. It's replaced the backup and restore with what we call file history. It really is another renamed version of volume shadow copy if you're familiar with that. And we're going to use that file history now to restore these accidentally deleted files or corrupted files and folders to previous versions that we have configured in our file history. System image backups can now only be achieved one of two ways, either by using a third-party utility like Clonezilla or Ghost, which will build me a sector-by-sector based image, or by invoking the Start Backup utility via the PowerShell to build me a Windows-based image. And also, OneDrive files, if I delete them, they're not going to be stored on my local machine. They're actually going to be retained on the website until I either choose to delete those, the 30-day time period runs out, or until I choose to restore them out of the recycle bin. Alright, let's move on to the demo and let's talk about some of these utilities. Okay folks, welcome to the demo segment of our Lesson 23 lecture for the day. Today we're going to be tinkering around a little bit with file history. I want to show you how to configure file history. I'd like to show you how to configure a system image. And by the way, I did find a way that we can do the system image through the GUI interface using the file history control panel, and I'll show that to you as well today. I'm also going to take a moment and show you how to delete and reinstall a file on OneDrive. So let's go ahead and get started, shall we? Okay, so we're going to go ahead and we are going to actually go into the file history. The file history can be found in the control panel. If I go into the control panel here and go into file history, you will see that I have the file history turned off. Now I have gone ahead for the sake of our demonstration today and attached an external hard drive for our use. Now there are a couple ways. First, before we begin setting up file history, I do want to show you something. If you look down here in the bottom left hand corner on the screen, you do see this system image backup utility. Now, as I said before a long time ago in a lecture far, far away, like 5 minutes ago, I pointed out that I could actually invoke, and if I go into the command prompt, I could actually invoke the system image backup through the command prompt. However, we do have this GUI interface here that will allow me to actually create a system image much easier than through the command prompt method that I explained earlier. So I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. I'm going to click on there. I'm going to choose my C drive, and I am going to actually start the backup process for this system image for the VM that I'm working on at the present moment. Now this system image will take a little bit of time to build, even with a virtual machine with as little space on it as there is. But once I have finished, I will have a system image or an image of the C drive that's Windows based, and I can use to rebuild this system in the event of a catastrophic failure. Okay, thanks to the modern miracle of editing, we have completed our backup image successfully. Now I can go into my Windows image backup folder in my E drive, and I can actually see that that image has been created here. And if I open it up, you can see that this is the actual backup here, and it is file based, and as well as the catalog logs and all of the metadata needed to restore this image has been successfully saved onto my external drive. Now, I want to go ahead, while I'm in file history, I want to go ahead and configure turn it on and get it configured. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and turn on the file history, I think. Okay, now that I have turned on the file history, I can go into the advanced settings and I can begin to configure how often I want to save copies of my files and how long I want to keep those saved sessions. So how can I do that? Well, I can go in and I can choose every hour, daily, and I can dictate how much of my offline cache or disk space I want to allocate to actually retaining saved versions. And I'm going to say 3 months here. Now, I can also go in and look at the history event logs and the recent event logs for errors here. I'm going to go ahead and save these changes. And now from this point forward, I will be able to save my settings or save my data daily, 3 months up to 10% of my disk space. Now, as far as folders goes, I can go in and I can add or exclude specific folders that I do not want to have backed up on the system. Okay, and I can also select my drive to actually choose where I want that data to be stored. Okay, like so. So very quickly, now I can go ahead and actually run my file history data, and I have gone ahead and done that, and I have copied that data effectively on the system. Okay, so setting up, that's pretty much how you set up file history. Now I can also, last but not least, I do want to go in and I want to show you how to install or do a reinstall of a file that has been deleted off of OneDrive. So we're going to go into a OneDrive account here. We're going to actually look at some files, and I am just going to delete this random PDF. I right click on it and I say scroll down until I see delete, and I am going to delete it. Now while it's deleting, here's that undo button. I can click this undo button and I can actually halt the process and restore that file. Now I have allowed that file to actually be totally deleted, so I am going to go into the recycle bin and I am going to retrieve that file by just doing that. Very simple process. Now that's how you undelete a file in the OneDrive. And as I said before, that file would stay there for 30 days before it was deleted out of the system automatically. Alright, so that's a quick version of how to set up file history. We could actually go in if we wanted to, and we could go back in, and we're going to close out of this altogether, close all tabs, and we can go back into our control panel, and I can go into file history, and I could do a restore, and I could click on restore personal files like so, and I can get a list of all the files now of what I would like to restore. Now I don't have anything in here that's been restored yet or has been actually copied over yet, but I could in theory go ahead and restore. Let's see where I want to restore this shortcut. Let's restore this shortcut, and I can say restore it, replace it in the destination, and there you go. I have completely restored that Bing icon where it came from. Same version that was just there, but nevertheless, there you go. So as far as setting up file history and restoring from file history, it really doesn't get any simpler than this. And now that we have refound the system image backup from the GUI interface, we can create a system image backup as well, provided we have an external source or another volume to store the backup to. Alright, so that is it for our demo for today. By the way, I hope that you have enjoyed the series. I do hope that if you have really enjoyed it, that you subscribe to the channel and Instructor Neil, and watch some of the other things that I'll be producing in the near future dealing with other IT related issues.